fine.
Thank you.
All right. Councillor Hutton, did you have one? Okay. Item 12 for me, Mr CEO, just in terms of the officer's response, this is in relation to a notice of motion from Councillor Bello in review of the DA process. The officers have said that they've commenced the review and will present to council in due course. I just get a little bit uncomfortable with the words due course. It's a bit open-ended. I'm just wondering if we could tie that down a bit more, please.
Understand, Mr Mayor, that the resolution nominates 6 months,
Yep.
so we'll be sure to keep to that time.
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors?
Just, Mr Mayor, if we could have an update in relation to the barking dogs issue at Karen Drive later in the meeting. Does it need to be now?
We can address it now, Councillor Mather.
If we have
It's a matter outstanding, so we can just, if you want to ask for an update,
please.
we can ask the CEO.
Yes.
Yes, there was quite a bit of activity in relation to this particular, or the particular transaction that prompted this resolution. There was quite a bit of activity on that immediately prior to Christmas. I'll get an update for councillors as at today and provide that during one of the breaks perhaps, but it is thankfully, or prior to Christmas, was thankfully nearing conclusion.
Thank you. You happy with that, Councillor Mather? We'll get an update later on in the meeting.
Yes, that's what I was looking for, because I think there have been some developments there too.
All right.
I do have one, Mr Mayor. I do have one more, Mr Mayor. Number 13, Rockhampton-Yeppoon Road upgrade. I understand that we have written to the TMR and Member for Keppel asking or encouraging community consultation with the people in relation to the design. I don't expect that we would have anything back as yet because of the short space in between the Christmas holidays. But I'm just asking anyhow if we've received anything back.
Mr Mayor, no, the limited number of business days between that resolution, Councillor Mather,
Yes.
and today, there hasn't been any response from either the department or the local member that I've seen.
Not knowing when the letters went, but as I said, I think it was only a short space of time.
Yes.
We might have to be a little bit patient on that one. Thank you.
All right, any other questions, councillors? All right, so we're receiving this report. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Move Councillor Friend, seconded Councillor Mather. Thank you. All in favour? Carried unanimously. All right, 7.2, councillors, as is part of our normal meeting process, there are a number of matters lying on the table from previous meetings. We are lifting, I beg your pardon, the notice of motion from Councillor Friend in relation to sealing of the minimal area at Adelaide Park Road for dealing later on in this meeting. So in this case, we're just basically resolving to remove this from, or sort of try that again. We'll raise it from the table. Thank you very much. Moved Councillor Friend, seconded Councillor Watson. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. 10.1, questions, statements, motions on notice from councillors. We have a notice of motion from Councillor Mather in relation to a resheet of Jepson's Road. Now, Councillor Mather, I'm going to ask you to speak to this, but then I think there's a response from the officers, Mr CEO, as well, so we'll indulge that as well. Councillor Mather, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And while I'm speaking to it, I have the real photos here. I'd like to pass those around so members can actually see what I'm speaking about. I'm just going to page 16, Mr Mayor. Where my motion is. That due to the slippery surface on the red soil, which comprises Jepson's Road, causing the milk tanker to slip off the road surface into the table drain, necessitating a tow truck to pull it out, a gravel resheet be applied to a section of the road from the He Slips Jepson Road intersection to the bend in the road, length approximately 200 to 250 metres, as a matter of priority. I'd be happy for people to have a look at that, Mr. Chair, before I proceed. Yes, it is. Mr. Mayor, I thank the table for its patience. It's important that the members see the photos as clearly as possible, because the ones that were printed in the agenda don't really reflect the seriousness of the situation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I've moved the motion and I'm just looking for a seconder, please.
All right, seconded, Councillor Friend. All right, did you want to speak to your motion now, Councillor?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I've never done this before.
Sorry.
Sorry, my apologies. I just wondered if we were going to hear from the officers before we went into debate.
I don't mind either way, Mr.
Yeah, I
Mayor.
was going to basically do that as part of debate, but anyway, let's we can do that, Mr. CEO. Are you happy either way, Councillor Mather?
I'm happy either way, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, we're happy to, Mr. Mayor. I think the officer's commentary is reasonably self-explanatory insofar as the subject road is one of the lower order roads and it is due for attention in March. We receive these requests from time to time, and I guess at different times we've explained to councillors the importance of managing the program centrally rather than in isolation, but it's absolutely councillors' prerogative to consider this matter as it's presented. Jeff Carter's here if councillors have got any specific questions.
All right, so just to clarify, Mr. CEO, this road is scheduled for maintenance in March?
According to the report, yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Carter, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, it's a low water class 10 road, which under our service levels receives 10% gravel coverage, so full coverage is not there. Yeah, it's a Gibson Road's a class 10 road, which constitutes 10% gravel coverage under our service levels. It would have 10% gravel coverage at the moment. Council does have a policy where should residents want an increase in that gravel coverage, they can provide the gravel and council will place it free of charge. The maintenance nominated for March is preliminary at the moment. Naturally, we're going to see what happens with the weather event at the moment, and that could change. Photos indicate that the truck's sort of gone off the road to the side, whether it's been another passing vehicle or slipped off the road, I'm not quite sure. But yeah, there are possibilities for residents to contribute to an increased amount of gravel.
All right, thank you. Councillor Mather.
Well, I thank the officer for the comments. For a start, I don't dispute it's a lower order road. It's half a kilometre, 0.533 of a kilometre. I'm looking at the first straight stretch. It's only one angled on that road, and I'm looking at the first straight stretch where the tanker went over. Now, I've never known a vehicle to slip off the road because there was insufficient bondage on that road to actually secure it in its wheel tracks. We are just very lucky that we didn't have anybody injured in that. And in fact, it was only about a week and a half later that I was down at Emu Park on another job and Councillor Watson was there. We actually spoke to the fellow who pulled them out. It was just pure coincidence that he was on that job as well. I don't dispute it's a Class 10 road, and I don't dispute that 10% gravel on low-class roads is adequate. I would question whether some of the roads have any gravel, and I believe this is one of them. How could you slip off a road if it's safe? And how could we allow it to go to another 3 months knowing that it's unsafe? Because I had a call from the lady who lives on that road on my way to work this morning. She almost slipped off and she was doing 12 kilometres an hour. Now that milk tanker comes out every second day. Every time that tanker comes out, there's a risk to us. Not only to them and their injuries and their infrastructure, but also to us. And the question is, are we prepared to take that risk, knowing full well it's there and it's been brought to our attention? We can say to people, if you want your road upgraded, you can contribute towards it. They have not asked for the road to be upgraded. They don't use those words out there. All they ask for is maintenance, something that keeps their road in a safe condition. They would not ask for an upgrade. They know how our Shire is difficult in finding funding to upgrade its road at any stage, maintenance-wise. So they're not going to ask for an upgrade. I'm asking for that road to be safe. And the only way we can make it safe is to apply gravel to it. So any vehicle that uses that road can do so in a safe condition as best as we can make it possible. I can't wait till March, Mr. Mayor. I don't believe this council can wait till March. In fact, the longer we wait to do anything with that road, every day is a ticking time bomb as far as I'm concerned. And I think that's about all I need to say at this moment.
All right. Councillor Friend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're in debate now, so I'd like to speak for it if I may.
Well, we're going to follow the process of speaking against. I thought you might have had a question. No. So anyone speaking against? Councillor Hutton.
I have a question, sorry.
Oh, question,
Mr. Mayor. So I just wanted to ask to Mr. Carter through the CEO, it says in the advice provided around officers in regards to the risk assessment, the risk of incident is low. When was the last time this road was assessed, either visually or using the bump meter or any other methodology by an engineer?
I would imagine that our technical officer inspected the road immediately after this incident was raised. From what I've seen this morning, the last time the bump meter was on it was probably over 12 months ago. But he would have certainly inspected it after this customary question came to order. I just wanted to correct one error in the report from the officer, is the fact that from the start of the road to the bend is actually 500 metres. Yeah, it's twice the length of what's nominated in the report.
Thank you. Councillor Watson, speak a question.
Yeah, just a question. Through the chair, Jeff, if it's $4,000 for the gravel, does that mean it's $8,000 now because it's longer distance?
The 4,000 quoted is what the estimate for the cost of the gravel should a member of the public want to contribute to the upgrade. Say yes, that would be double if they want the whole 500 metres done.
Councillor Friend, question?
Question. Thank you so much, Jeff. My question is just going back to that 500 metres. So the notice of motion reads from Heathslips to Jepson Road intersection, from there to the bend of the road. That's the 500 metres you're talking about, for clarification.
Yeah, I'll just clarify, from the intersection of Heathslip Road to the bend is 500 metres. The bend is approximately 100 metres in length, so you're talking 600 metres by the time you get around the bend, and the total road length's approximately 740.
Just a correction, Mr. Mayor. Sorry. I did measure that road. The red register said 0.533 of a kilometre. Fiona Jepson, who lives in the house on that road, came with me. We measured it. It went exactly from that intersection with Heathslips Road to the grid where it turns into the dairy. It's exactly 5.33.
Councillor Eastwood, question?
Oh, my question is just to Mr. Carter. So the bump meter, as it's a slippery road, would really make no difference, would it?
No, the IRI roughness meter measures roughness. We're talking about gravel coverage here. Council's level of service doesn't provide for full gravel coverage. So during wet weather, you will get roads that can be a little bit slippery. I don't remember in my history here of actually vehicles being bogged at any time. Certainly they haven't been able to get past places because water's flowed across or that. Yeah, it's basically a level of service and how much gravel. The gravel, imported gravel provides protection prominently during wet weather and does allow better ride quality overall. Yeah.
Question to Councillor Mather. This is traditionally an operational matter that isn't normally dealt with at this table. I'm just wondering if you've dealt with this with the officers at your portfolio level.
Yes, Mr Mayor. I'd sent several emails to the manager and I got emails back. So the communication has been backwards and forwards.
And the communication from the officers said what?
One of the officers, and I quoted it in my background information, and the officer's reply was they acknowledged that it looks like there's amount of clay on the road. Now, I don't, as I put this to Bradley Jepson and Fiona, and they said, well, I don't know about the clay, but it's red soil and it makes it slippery. And I'm not disputing that it needs a bump meter, it's as smooth as a baby's backside, but at the same time, the consistency of the road material that's natural, in the absence of gravel to actually bind it, it creates the hazard in itself.
I guess, thank you, I appreciate the response.
The officer told me that they observed what they believed was clay. That's officer's words, not mine, but there have been several, I think 3 that I could recall, emails from me to the manager asking for help. And the last one I got, it said that we'll not have gravel. And that's when I put the notice in, Mr Mayor.
Okay, Mr Carter.
Just simply, Councillor Mavis, do you mean the manager or the general manager?
Sorry, the general manager.
Okay, thank you. Because I don't remember receiving any.
No. They've changed title, so I've got to get it right yet.
Okay, no, sorry.
It's the general
Well, I
manager.
guess my concern, Councillor Mather, is matters of these type, I would hope would be resolved not at this table but within the organisation itself, and I guess that's my concern with this particular matter before us today.
And I totally agree, Mr Mayor. It shouldn't have to come to the table. It should be a matter of common sense and responsibility. And I haven't seen either of those two come to the fore, and that's why I had to take action, and I will take action if I need to.
Councillor Eastwood?
Yeah, I find it really difficult voting on something like this where we don't know the circumstances of the vehicle going off the road. We weren't there. We've taken somebody's word. It's very difficult to make a judgment. That's how I feel in this matter.
Well, Mr Mayor, maybe the motion, maybe the foreshadowed motion would be that we go and inspect it and meet with the people on the road. I don't have a problem with that. I have nothing to hide. I mean, if people want to question my actions in my portfolio, by all means. I've got a bigger responsibility out there because it's forever deteriorating. The weather conditions are changing, we're doing maintenance, we're upgrading from place to place, and we're having setbacks all the time. This is a setback that we really can handle.
Well, Councillor Mather, I'd be happy to move a motion that is lay on the table pending an inspection by councillors that wish to go and the officers. Perhaps the manager could come out as well, because I think it makes a lot of sense for an inspection to happen, because Councillor Eastwood's spot on. I don't feel comfortable because I'm not armed with enough information either to make a decision on this.
Well, Mr Mayor, may I say, when somebody comes to the table and raises a portfolio matter that's important to them, I don't question them because I trust their judgment that they know what they need to do. If we have another way of dealing with it, that's fine. When we've got something on our doorstep that is proving and is a hazard, and we're waiting to do something else, every day is a ticking time bomb. That's my concern.
I'm not questioning your judgment, Councillor Mather, far from it, but what I am saying is that these matters don't normally come to the table, or shouldn't normally come to the table, and I think that it should have been resolved within the organisation. So ultimately, if we're going to make a decision on it, then I want to have a look.
I look, totally agree, Mr Mayor. Totally agree. It shouldn't have to come to the table. And I regret having to do that. But I have to do what I have to do to make sure that the integrity of this council is protected and the rights and the physical attributes to all of those people who use that road are also protected.
All right, councillors, I'm going to move the motion that this lay on the table pending an inspection by councillors and officers.
Mr Mayor, may I just also have an addendum to that? When we say pending an inspection, could we have a time frame of that inspection, say, for example, within this calendar month?
Yes, indeed. Good point. All right. So, Jussie, you with me on that one? I should have brought my glasses. No, thank you, I'm fine. I'm struggling, but I'll get it. So you happy with that, Councillor? That Councillor Mather, it comes back to the meeting for resolution unless otherwise resolved by February?
I'll be looking at tomorrow rather than down the track, because every day is a risk to this council.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking about before the end of the week.
Can I just say that seeing it's raining, it's probably more likely to be seen as slippery at this stage?
Yes,
if it
indeed.
is.
All right, so we're basically deciding on a date, councillors. When's what's the diaries like? What are the diaries like? Everyone happy with an inspection by the end of this week or the end of next week? Whatever. Sorry? End of this week? Okay. So that being, say, 17, 18, 19, by the 20th. Sorry? Yeah.
Take your surfboard.
Okay.
You need your
Is everyone,
surfboard.
is everyone comfortable with that? Understand it? All right. So we've got a procedural motion that lay on the table, councillors, pending that inspection and return to the February meeting. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Carter. (10.2) Notice of motion from Councillor Friend in relation to sealing of the minimal area Adelaide Park Road. This relates to what we lifted from the table earlier. Councillor Friend, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I will definitely move this, and I also would like to make an amendment that the two bottom parts of that council recommendation be removed, and that the top part, that council resolved to seal off an area located between 28 and 34 Adelaide Park Road for the purpose of minimising dust nuisance is amended to minimising dust nuisance in 23-24.
Okay.
And I will move that. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
While I was looking for the page, I didn't quite capture what the motion was.
So the
Can
motion,
I just have that repeated, please?
it's on 10.2, councillor, on the screen. So Justine's about to amend that. So it reads that council resolves to seal an off-road area located between 28 to 34 Adelaide Park Road for the purpose of minimising dust nuisance in 2023-24. Can I get got a mover and Councillor Friend? Can I get a seconder, please? Councillor Watson, thank you. Motion is live. Councillor Friend, did you want to speak to that?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In the past, seeing that this was laid on the table, I had spoken to it, so I will speak to it again. Our council within this tenure hasn't had the glittery time of actually cutting too many ribbons. What we have concentrated on within this tenure is reducing debt by $30 million, which is quite an achievement for this particular council. Therefore, when this has also given us as councillors the opportunity to listen to what the people's needs have been within our shire, what they desire and what urgent matters actually need to be attended to. We know from the past that the sealing of this particular area will cost $125,000. But this is what they call a collector road, Adelaide Park Road, and so it's heavily with traffic. It's heavy with traffic, I beg your pardon, and the dust for these historical residences is quite tremendous. And the previous residents of this area have been requesting that over the years that council help them with this. So I am listening to the people. I'm acting upon what I think is their reasonable requests, and I'd like us to undertake this sealing of this particular area for those residences. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Friend. Anyone speaking against?
Mr Mayor, we haven't said the type of seal that we're looking at doing or undertaking. So will that be open to suggestion as to whether it's a low-cost seal or whether, because they can be, if it's done properly, that can be quite effective at a major saving. I'm just wondering where we're going to get the $125,000 from, because we've just knocked back $15,000 from a safety issue, and yet we're quite prepared to have a think about $125,000 for a dust issue. You know, I'm talking to, both of them are important.
I think you're raising 2 points there, councillor. First of all is the matter of being able to afford it, but then secondly is the composition of the seal. So I'm going to deal with the composition of the seal first. For $125,000, councillor Friend, did you get an indication as to what type of seal?
I believe that's a bitumen seal,
right, to
align with the current road base that is there at this time.
Mr Mayor, maybe we get Mr Carter back to the table.
I was just going to suggest that councillor Friend, councillor Eastwood, beg your pardon.
Mr Mayor, it's actually in the report under commentary.
Is it?
That area, the same standard as the sealed shoulders, 3 metres wide, asphalt surfacing, a minimum of 400 millimetres.
Thank you. Missed that.
That's in line with the standards for collector road.
Right, thank you. Councillor Mather, you satisfied with that response?
I'm happy with the response, Mr Mayor, but I'm not happy as to where we're going to get the money from, because we've got some other big out-of-the-box.
Well, in passing this resolution, Mr CEO, you got a comment?
Mr Chairman, if I could, it's probably important that councillors consider this current item along with the following matter, which is essentially an extension of the commentary to the matter, and to pick up on councillor Mather's question on page 27 in his discussions with councillor Friend. There was Michael nominated a number of projects that might be considered that this project would be done in lieu of, so perhaps important in the deliberations for councillors to nominate which of those might be surrendered in next year's program.
Thank you. Seeing that we are now looking at this notice of motion that was brought from the laying of the table, and also the next report, which directly relates to this particular sealing of the Adelaide Road, I would like to ask a couple of questions. Thank you, Mr Mayor. So on page 27, thank you, Mr CEO, for bringing this up. We had a look at the General Manager of Infrastructure and myself sat down and we just went through the Forward Works program and looked at where can we find this $125,000. Council Depot relocation stage 1, I have some questions on the $3 million for that particular relocation. One of my questions, the first one is the depot actually being relocated in 23-24? That's the first question. I have a number of them.
Mr Mayor, as best laid plans. Certainly it's the council's intent, as we understand it, to get the next stage of Homemaker underway, which requires the relocation of the depot, and we understand councillors are pretty keen to see that happen. The budget provision makes that a possibility.
Thank you. My next question, relating to the same issue, what is the contingency factored into that $3 million in the budget for 23-24? What percentage of that $3 million is contingency?
I don't know offhand, Mr Chairman. Typically at this early stage, so detailed design hasn't been completed, so normally contingencies can be 40 or 50% until detailed design is done, and you narrow your contingency down as your design firms up and you become more confident about what those costs will be. So at this stage it would be fairly high, I would think. Thank
you, Mr CEO. So if it's 40 or 50%, what we'd be looking for is 4.17% of that contingency, approximately, even less if it's 50%. I worked on the fact that usually contingency is 40%. Will removing that 4.17% out of the contingency cause a major delay in this project?
If the design suggests that the estimate is underestimated, yes.
And so when the design when the design's brought forward, are we then definitely planning on having that design completed in 23-24? And that design, what you're saying is that design itself is going to cost $3 million.
Mr Mayor, if I understand the question correctly, the design's being undertaken at the moment. The allocation that's been made is an estimate based on best engineering known without detailed design, so it does have that factor in it. Those contingency factors can go the other way, of course, as well, and it might end up being a higher sum. We don't know that.
But the clarification is that the $3 million allocation is for the actual relocation.
Yes, design is being done this year.
Thank you, Mr CEO. So if the design is being done in this calendar year 22-23, that means the relocation is 23. The actual relocation, the building, etc., will be done in 23-24. Is that correct?
Mr Chairman, it's a multi-year project. This budget allocation will get the project underway. So when we say there's contingency in that, there's contingency for the first stage of the project. It's probably 3 or 4 times the sum that's nominated here over multiple years. The relocation won't happen until the project is complete.
Thank you. My next question in relation to this particular report, 11.1, would be that officers have recommended that extra guideposts would be placed near the ceiling to stop any vehicles from actually then using that sealed area. How then will the residents in this historical residential area then access their driveways with extra guideposts?
Mr Mayor, if the current motion is passed, I think that's a moot point. They won't be installed if the project proceeds.
Thank you.
Councillor Eastwood.
Mr Mayor, look, I've just got a question for Mr Carter. If you could go to the table.
Sure.
Yeah, my question is just in relation to, we've got, there's 2 motions, 10.2 and 10.3. Which of them do you think is the most important to go forward first? If we were going to...
Can I just see clarification? I've got 10.2 is notice of motion from Councillor Friend in relation to sealing. What's 10.3?
That's sealing the shoulder. Is that right?
11.1.
Oh, well, this
sorry, okay. No,
sorry,
right.
okay, yeah,
Yep,
sorry.
I'm with you.
Yeah, okay,
Mayor,
one's from notice of motion, one's an agenda item.
I might be able to provide some clarity, perhaps. There is one motion that's on the screen.
Yep.
Councillor's original notice of motion had 3 different options. The
Yep.
council has now reduced that to one option. The officers who provide a commentary in the next report recommend contrary to that motion.
Right. Clear as mud.
Can you clarify that for us, Mr. CEO?
So item 11.1, which is, as I said, essentially an extended commentary on the original notice of motion. The recommendation is allocate the $125,000 in 27-28 and install guideposts to. So the motion council is considering at the moment is for this to be done next year. Our chief engineer recommended otherwise.
Mr. Carter has a response. Yeah.
I was just going to clarify the guidepost situation. Guideposts were put in existing, were just on the edge of the road, which permitted vehicles to go on the inside of them onto the unsealed section. The idea of the additional guideposts is to turn them into driveways. That prevents people travelling parallel to the road, but they can enter and exit their driveways freely. So basically you're bringing each guidepost around, or a series of guideposts around, in and out of each driveway, blocking the parallel path along the unsealed shoulder.
Thank you.
Just a quick question then, Mr. Carter. In the report, it talks about making it a quality that allows for trucks to park and buses to park. If we put the posts in, they won't be able to park anyway.
Yeah, the guideposts are an interim measure. Yeah. So
You mean until the road's completed, they just put the posts in?
Yes, the guideposts are there if it remains unsealed to prevent vehicles using that area.
Oh, okay.
Should we upgrade that area, it has to be constructed to the same standard as Goytre Road because it's going to potentially see that sort of traffic. Yes.
Can I just ask one more question while we're at it? This is all about dust, right?
I believe
This
so.
is pretty much what it's all about. Late last year, the street in Nimmy Park, sorry, oh God, where we were trying to stop the water from going into people's house, we used a mixture of gravel and cement to stop the water from going into those people's yards. Is there any reason why that same process can't be done to seal that area? Because it'd have to be cheaper than putting bitumen and everything in, and it stops the dust.
The area done at Emu Park was to prevent water flow, not dust. And it's serviced by one individual car, a vehicle in and out of the driveway, not a multitude of heavy traffic, light traffic.
But if you could leave the white post there, you wouldn't have to worry about it, would you? There'd be no traffic other than the car going in and out.
I don't understand what you mean.
What I'm trying to suggest is that we're trying to stop the dust. That was the whole purpose of this. Also, to stop people from undertaking on the road, which we heard from that lady when we were there that day.
Which would cause the dust, yes.
Yeah, that's right. You just mentioned about putting white posts in to shake people to go into their driveways. If you did that with this concrete thing, no one would be able to drive up the inside and you wouldn't have the dust problem because it's effectively a cement thing.
So the dust problem is caused by vehicles parking, generally pulling up and parking at that location off the road. The idea of the guidepost was to prevent that and still allow people to enter their driveway. It's the landowner's responsibility to upgrade their driveway to a seal standard, should they choose to. If their entry and exit along their driveway is causing a dust problem, it's their responsibility to mitigate that problem.
But your guideposts are going to stop the people from travelling on this to save that in this section that we're talking about, isn't it?
In lieu of sealing it. Yes.
That's right, yeah.
Yes.
So what I'm saying is if you combine the two with the gravel and the cement which you've done up on that hill.
The guidepost would mean that you don't require any form of sealing of the shoulder because you're keeping vehicles off it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking if you combine the two, it would be cheaper than the $125,000. That's all I'm getting at.
Yeah, I think what Mr. Carter's saying is if you have the guideposts in place, you won't necessarily need to add that cement to the gravel. Any other questions?
Yes, Mr Mayor, please.
Councillor Mather.
I think we need to determine, certainly I do, I know we're trying to suppress the dust. That's the priority. We're talking trucks stopping, buses stopping. What are we going to what is this area going to be used for? Is it for trucks or buses? Anybody pulling over to pick up or drop off somebody? Or is it purely going to be for driveway purposes to suppress the dust? I think we have to ask ourselves those questions, because if it's driveway that we're looking at, and from what I understand in my reading and understanding of that low-cost seal, it's not going to be used as a roadway, and therefore does it need to, it is compatible with the sealed surface that's there on the main thoroughfare. Just if Councillor Watson can answer that question, Mr Mayor. I mean, if it's only going to be used for a driveway that we can actually guide the people in there, and if it does butt up and compatible with the bitumen, we've served the purpose.
It's going to be, you're not going to have anyone turning off the road at 60 kilometres an hour. They're going to be doing it at 10 kilometres an hour.
Yeah, well, I guess the question is, it's kind of asked and answered by Mr Carter. Ultimately, you're doubling up. If you're going to have the guideposts in place to prevent people from accessing that gravel part of the road, shoulder of the road, then why would you need to add the component of concrete and
because if
gravel?
you're going with a low-cost thing that could break up, because it's not road surface, and you're trying to slow the vehicles down and stop the other vehicles from parking there, why not have both?
Mr Carter, can we have a couple of lights off, please? Thank you. Councillor Mather.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, I thought that was a question.
No, it doesn't.
Sorry, my understanding is the dust issue is the reason for the ceiling, or suggested ceiling. The dust is caused by vehicles that pull up there to drop off people and all the rest of it. The report put together by Mr Creedman suggested that be delayed to 27, 28, based on current priorities. As an interim measure, we can put these guideposts to prevent vehicles traversing that area, apart from those entering and exit the driveway. If the guideposts are in, there's no need for any other treatment, because vehicles won't be on that unsealed area. And it's not the unsealed area breaking up from people entering and exit their driveway. It's just a dust issue.
Councillor Friend.
Councillor Friend, question?
Well, Councillor Friend is going to ask a question. Councillor Watson.
Yes, my question is, what calibre of guideposts would they be to help direct people into their driveway? Are they going to be those plastic reflective ones, or are they going to be more substantial?
They would be standard guideposts used at the moment, which typically are the plastic ones with a steel base.
That won't do anything. You've only got to look at the Bluff Hill where they're all running over them all the time. And this is what the problem is in that area. As you heard from that woman that day, people are taking over and driving up the footpath. That's not going to stop anyone from driving through there with those sort of posts.
Yeah.
Sorry, just the wrong product to use in this occasion.
Well, if they were found to being knocked over by vehicles still wanting to park in that area, we could go to timber guideposts, but they would have to be frangible. We can't put in bollards that are heavily resistant, because you can cause issues there.
All right. Any other questions, councillors?
I think the question remains, where are we going to get the money from? We're looking at it in this current budget.
Well, that's for you to determine and how you vote, councillor. I think, because the officers have offered up some suggestions as to where the money can potentially come from. They're saying in their recommendation that this could potentially be pushed out to 27, 28 in terms of the ceiling, and the interim measure is to install some guideposts to prevent people accessing. So they've offered up some solutions. If you have some other solutions, happy to hear. Councillor Watson.
Is there any way that we could do that cement thing with, it's not cement, but it's gravel with cement in it, and just put curbing and channeling on the side so they can't drive in there, and that's a far cheaper alternative to the bitumen?
Well, I don't know that that's the case, so I'd have to go to Mr Carter on that one.
Because I know the costings with the...
It's still some form of upgrade construction that would have to be considered in a capital budget. Yeah. The request was to widen the area towards vehicles used to pull up. If you put curb and channel in, you prevent that.
Well, I'm thinking we just stop them from parking there. We just put the curb and channel in, put the dust suppressant, basically what it is in there.
Well, if you've got curb and channel, they won't be going past that, so you won't need it.
Yeah, that's the point.
Mr Mayor, we're making decisions, or we're trying to come to a decision on the run, and we've got so many options here. We want to do what we have to do. There's no doubt about that. Well, we know that we've got a lot of money that we need to find in the next couple of months, or even this month. But we need to find the best and most cost-efficient way to get this job done, to alleviate the pressures on these people.
Well,
Because
at the moment, we're going around in a whole bunch of
That's what
circles,
I'm
councillors,
saying.
and everyone's got a
Should
different
we be
view
sitting-
and a different opinion on what should happen here.
Yeah.
I think that ultimately we could potentially allocate this to a briefing session, maybe, and we get some further discussion going on around
Also
that.
move, Mr Mayor, if that be the case.
Councillor Hutton, question?
I just wanted to put forward potentially recognising the motion as it stands. If we were to vote this down and to accept the officer's recommendation for 11.1, we would then have the opportunity when we do the budget process over the coming months to revise the capital program and actually look as to how this could fit and to the costings for any alternatives. Like, I think the only definitive choice we would make is if we were to take up the notice of motion today, and therefore you'd be committing it for your next budget, where if you were to vote down the notice of motion but accept the officer's recommendation for the report, you'd have the capacity to consider it again and again as part of the capital program, and therefore you can talk about costings, you can talk about alternate solutions. So I'd propose that may be a path forward if councils would like, as opposed to the laying it on the table or the continuing circle.
All right. Well, the other option is Councillor Friend may consider withdrawing it until we actually have an opportunity to discuss it as part of the budget process.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I was perplexed to begin with because this particular notice of motion's come back to the table, and sometimes when notices of motion do come back to the table, we're only left with the officer's report. Yet we've got this notice of motion and the officer's report in this same agenda. So first and foremost, I was perplexed about that, thinking that was highly unusual. Secondly, I would like us to actually vote on this to get it either forward or out of the way, and then we can concentrate on the next 11.1 and have a vote on that as well.
All right. So we'll go the route of normal debate then. I think you've spoken to it, Councillor Friend. Anyone speaking against?
Mr Mayor, I'd foreshadow that the matter be referred to a briefing session. I don't want to see this go down because it's dead in the water, if that be the case.
No.
The next 11.1 is the same matter.
So with this one, Councillor Mather, you're either voting in support of putting this into the 23-24 program or not. And then we'll deal with 11.2, which is the officer's recommendation about putting it to 27-28 and having guideposts installed.
Now it's confused me, Mr Mayor.
All right. Anyone speaking against? Councillor Eastwood? Councillor Mather, your light's on too, thank you.
Yes, Mr Mayor, only because 11.1 follows this matter, and just in my humble opinion, I think that we should try cheaper options first. So maybe try the guideposts and see how that goes, and if it doesn't work, that's something we can do pretty much straight away, I imagine. If that doesn't work, then it can come back to the table. To me, it's just a common sense approach.
Just a question through you, Mr Mayor, to the member. How will the guideposts suppress the dust?
We've just had that conversation from Mr Carter that if the vehicles aren't driving onto the off-road area, then you're not going to have the dust. That's pretty simple.
But they need to get into the off-road area to get to their homes.
Yeah, and
you can't park on a driveway.
Councillor Mather, that's been explained by the officer. They'll get access via their driveways, which will be basically guided by the posts. Anyone speaking for? Yes, I know. Anyone wish to speak against? We're happy to go to the vote on this one, councillors. All right. So we've got the resolution, or the recommendation, I beg your pardon, from Councillor Friend, that council resolved to seal an off-road area located between 2834 Adelaide Park Road for the purpose of minimising dust nuisance in 2023-24. Those for, or those in favour? Those against? Motion is lost. All right.
So I And Mr Mayor?
We move on to 11.1, which is the officer's recommendation. The council resolves to allocate $125,000 in the 27-28 capital budget for sealing the shoulder adjacent to 2834 Adelaide Park Road and install additional guideposts to deter motorists using the unsealed shoulder as an informal slip lane. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Hutton, moving, seconding. Councillor Friend, thank you.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to make an amendment if Councillor Hutton is agreeable to this.
Well, what's your
You
amendment?
moved it. That's
Yeah, what's your amendment, Councillor?
My amendment would be to allocate the $125,000 in 23-24 capital budget for sealing the shoulder adjacent to and install additional guideposts, and this is good wording, to deter motorists using the unsealed shoulder as an informal slipway. This is where the wording, to me, needs to change, only to note that the guideposts are there to direct people into the driveways.
So essentially, you want to change point 1 essentially to what your motion was previously.
To 23-24 and to install additional guideposts in order to direct motorists into the driveways specifically.
Right. So
But that's
you want to propose an amended, or are you going to foreshadow that to see how this one goes?
I propose the amended if Councillor Hutton is agreeable to it, and if he's not agreeable to it, then I propose a foreshadowed motion.
All right. Councillor Hutton.
I have a question of the CEO in regards to, would it be ultra vires to, we're re-prosecuting and voting on something we just voted down?
There's probably two matters that arise. So one is an amendment is generally to be complementary to the intent of the motion. I think by defeating the earlier motion, the proposed amendment probably isn't complementary to that. Likewise, whether or not a motion so soon after something essentially the same has been voted down is in order or not would be in question, and I would think it's not in order.
Thank you. I do have a question, and thank you, Councillor. I do have a question to the CEO in relation to the operational side of setting the agenda with the original notice of motion and then the next officer's report as a separate entity. So this was presented to us as councillors. Is this the usual case? I have not come across this.
I would say it's not unique. I think the preference would have been that Michael's report was added as a commentary to the original notice of motion. I think I made that point a couple of times in responding to questions. It hasn't changed the debate any, so the notice of motion that was laying on the table and was lifted earlier was considered first. This is considered to be supplementary material to that, and in fact, if the notice of motion had have got up in whatever form earlier, I would have simply withdrawn this from the agenda.
Thank you.
So I think it's important, though, particularly given that you and Michael did a lot of work on this, that work was reported to your colleagues.
Certainly. Well, okay,
Councillor Friend, I think your amendment it's probably not in order.
No, okay,
So
I can understand that.
Yeah, I might discount that.
Yes, that's fine. I can understand that. However, I would like the amendment to stand on number 2, point about the install additional guideposts in order to direct traffic into the driveways, because to deter motorists using the unsealed shoulder as an informal slip lane, that could be determined that the guidepost will go around that whole unsealed shoulder, and I specifically want it to be known that the traffic will actually be directed into the driveways, guided.
It wouldn't be legal for us to block off their driveways, so we couldn't, even if it was written as is, we could not undertake it in the way that you fear, because everyone has a right to access their property and that's where their driveways are, so it couldn't be it couldn't be misrepresented in that way.
I think that's the best you're going to get, Councillor Friend.
Thank you so much. Is it possible through the mover, Councillor Hutton, to leave it as it is, except to ask for the additional guideposts to be installed in 23-24?
Well, you can do that
Or
now,
this
Councillor.
year, or 22-23?
We can install them in the next couple of weeks.
Excellent, okay.
Could I suggest if you're worried about the driveway, point two, you could say, leave it as it is, whilst providing access for residents through their driveways.
Thank you.
Something like that too.
Thank you, Mr Carter, that's wonderful wording. Appreciate that.
Can I have that wording again for the minutes, please?
At the end, whilst providing or maintaining access for residents along their driveways.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Watson.
I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity for a workshop to talk about this, so we're not going round and round in circles and all this, because we don't seem to be really getting the full hang of it, do
We
we?
know what we want.
Oh, hang on. Can we just turn some lights off for a second? Ultimately, let's vote on this first, okay? If this fails, then we can basically put it to a workshop. I'm going to test this one first, please.
Can I just ask a question? Where does one sit in this resolution we're about to put forward? Where does one sit?
I'm not sure what
Number
you
one.
mean. Oh, one. I thought,
Yeah, where
Right.
does allocate
I thought you
125?
meant one as in a person. Yeah, right.
We're going for two, that seems to be acceptance. Where does one sit in this? Is it part and parcel of the resolution?
Yes, it is.
So we're talking 120, we're actually nominating a figure. We're nominating it for the 27-28 budget. Is
Yes.
that right?
We are.
Which,
Yes.
yeah,
That's right. It's plain. Yeah. So you've got to basically decide whether you want to support this going into 27-28 or not. All right. So we've got a mover in Councillor Hutton, seconded Councillor Friend. All in favour? Those against? Motion is carried. 11.2 is a response to questions on notice from Councillor Hutton in relation to the Marlborough Depot costings. And we are just receiving this report. Councillor Hutton, you have the information? Okay. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Happy to move Councillor Hutton. Seconded, I'll second that one. Thank you. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. And while I think of it, Mr Watson, Mr John Watson, you're sitting over there. There's a vacant chair with the officers here. Would you like to take up a bit of desk space? That's all right. No, well, you're welcome to sit over there because the CHRO is not with us at the moment. I thought it might be more comfortable for you.
Mr Mayor, have we resolved this recommendation?
Which one, Councillor Mather?
11.2.
11.2, yes, we
Okay.
have. We've received.
I noticed that the manager just left. I'm disappointed that he's left because I was going to make a comment there, Mr Mayor. I don't have any problem receiving the report, but he made a comment in there that difficult to attract suitably qualified and experienced staff. It's expected to continue. That's not true.
Well, the matter's been dealt with, Councillor
Yes,
Mather, so
I
I'm going
understand
to
that,
leave
but
that.
that statement is not true.
Well, 11.3, moving on, Central Queensland Regional Organisation of Councils update from the June to December period in 2022. And the recommendation is that the confidential minutes of the meeting of the CQ Rock held on the 24th of June in Emerald, 23rd of September in Yeppoon and 17/18 in Billawheeler be received. Any questions, councillors, on that one? Councillor Friend?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Would you, because you attend CQ Rock, you and the Deputy Mayor and Mr CEO, what is your role in CQ Rock? And what type of projects are currently on the table there?
Okay. My current role within CQ Rock is as chair. We currently do not have a deputy chair at this point, but traditionally that will be resolved at the next meeting of CQ Rock. The major projects we're working on, and I'm going to give councillors a briefing on one of them. There are two major projects underway at the moment. One is the Central Queensland Waste Strategy, and the second one is the Central Queensland Defence Strategy. So both of those are active, as you know. I went to Canberra with Mayors Burnett and Williams, as well as Mr Grant Cassidy, who's currently the chair of Regional Development Australia, Central and Western Queensland, to promote our case for a greater military presence. And I'm going to give councillors a presentation. I haven't spoken to the CEO yet, but I'm going to give councillors a presentation at the next briefing session on our presentation and what transpired during that trip. I believe there's also going to be an update in terms of the waste strategy at that meeting too, Mr CEO. So things are happening. What I am particularly pleased about, Councillor Friend, and thank you for your question, is the collaboration that's currently existing between the 6 councils. Obviously there's ourselves, Rockhampton Regional Council, Gladstone Regional Council, Central Highlands Regional Council, Banana Shire Council and Woorabinda Indigenous Council. So the collaboration and fellowship between those councils now is, in my view, fantastic. We are working very positively and I think kicking some significant goals, and I hold up those 2 strategies that we're currently working on as examples of that.
Mr Mayor?
Councillor Hutton.
So I just wanted to check, and were the minutes of the 4 sets of meetings attached? Because I couldn't find them, and then when I looked in the confidential agenda folder, I couldn't find them there either. So, okay. So in which case, can I suggest we just withdraw this report and bring it back next month, because we can't move minutes, or we can't approve minutes that none of us have seen.
If we've not distributed minutes to council, is that?
Sorry, I did wonder that I'd just put them in a special place and couldn't find them.
It sounds like they haven't. Sounds like they haven't been distributed, so we will do that. Yep.
It's on the page, yeah. Right, 11.4 councillors, which is the Department of Communities portfolio report.
So where are we at with 11.3, Mr Mayor?
11.3, we're withdrawing councillors because
Okay,
there's no minutes attached.
Mr Mayor, we have already withdrawn, we've moved on. However, it does say confidential minutes in the report.
It does say confidential minutes, but they will be distributed in the confidential section of council's report.
Thank you.
So 11.4, and welcome to the table, Mr General Manager. The floor is yours.
Good morning, Mayor and Councillors. I present to you the Communities Portfolio Report for the last quarter of the year. And just to go through a few things, I'd like to note a few of the points on the report here, and obviously we all know what is happening with the station, and commend obviously the Economy and Places team on those different outcomes at the end of last year. We are working towards obviously the recommendations that were approved by Council and to get that underway as per our funding guidelines. I might also touch briefly on community and cultural services. You'll see our incoming calls have reduced with the quarter, and that's because July to September is a rating period, so you can anticipate that that's always going to be higher. You'll also see our calls abandoned have minimised as well, and that's because the new telephone system was implemented in November. That is continuing to decline, which is great news for us. Libraries have been very busy, as you can see. They always are over the Christmas period, and they have had a total of 273 new members, which is fantastic, and we continue to have a very high membership rate regardless for a smaller local government. Their development environment, again, continuing great results, and I'll bring councillors' attention to the applications in relation to building. And then that we are around about 50-50 in relation to council applications decided, and of course private certifiers, which shows a very strong, I suppose, commendment to obviously our building certifiers and what the public, think of those the services that we provide. Plumbing days are continuing to stay low with 3 days, and building, as I touched on before, is 26, which again is a very good result. And if I may touch on our, the last page, our local disaster management groups. We had some interesting, a couple of stranded vehicles at the end of last quarter, which were resolved very quickly. But also we had a great campaign from the disaster management group in relation to our opt-in campaign, and you'll see that it was a nice collaboration between Open Spaces and the local disaster group in relation to they actually stenciled and sprayed different parts of the Shire to obviously attract people to opt in for those notifications, and you can see that the results were quite good. Thank you. Happy to take questions.
Councillor Friend.
As always, thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Mr General Manager. First and foremost, congratulations on a well-written report. It was easy to read and very understandable for lay people like myself. I have numerous questions, mostly pertaining to my own portfolio. However, the first one is not. But a question on page 34, previously Council resolved to place on hold placemaking funding.
Yes.
Does this mean that Council is unable to also seek grant funding for projects?
No, it does not.
So we are still able to undertake grant funding if necessary. I do have just a couple of statements with your leave, Mr Mayor, to make. First statement is good luck to all three of the entrants in the Australian Street Art Awards here in Livingstone. That's just fantastic, and hopefully they'll all do well, but just to be nominated is something amazing. Now, for my portfolio, on page 41, parking infringements from July to September increased dramatically. Why was this? Was it because of extra staffing we're able to monitor these parking infringements, etc.?
Yes, we, through the chair, we talking about the 623 to the 355. Yes, correct, Councillor. We had a little bit more resource availability in relation to that quarter, as opposed to some annual leave and different things, within the last quarter.
Thank you. Beach driving infringements are also increasing exponentially. Is this because there is currently a trial to close Farnborough Beach between 8 p.m. and 4 a.m, or is this the continuation of beach driving located at Rita Marta?
I can't, through the chair, I can't answer that definitively. The reason why the infringements are higher, or people are, gaining those infringements, all I can probably tell you is, I suppose, the split between the different infringements areas. You're looking around about, of those different infringements, about 1% at Tamby Point, 5 to 6% of those are turn right at Farnborough Beach. The rest are broken up, the remaining percentage is broken up fairly evenly between Farnborough Beach and, Rita Marta and Mullumbin.
Thank you so much, and that's also a great clarification for those that may be watching this live stream. Am I correct in saying that from yesterday, the 16th of January, through to the 6th of February, there is currently public consultation open in relation to vehicles on beaches? And where do people find this information?
Yes, there is. People can find the information on our website, also on our social media as well, and there's a direct link there.
Lovely. Page 42, as the portfolio holder of pest management, I'm interested in the figures for foxes. What do the figures refer to specifically? Is that how many were eradicated? Is that how many they were found? It doesn't quite state that.
Yes, through the chair, I might make that a little clearer in next quarterly report, but that is the eradication.
Thank you. So Council has been running this fox eradication program quite successfully. And obviously those figures relate to that success of that particular program. That's great. Page 42, pest management plants and figures are reducing. So that's really great work, and I'd like to make a statement and give a big shout out and a thank you and a congratulations to Dave Mitchell, Glenn McIntyre, Dave Huggins for Vector, and the trainee Jake in that particular pest management area. They do a great job, and I'd like to acknowledge them publicly.
Yes, concur.
And that's all I have. Thank you.
Councillor Eastman.
I've just got one question just in relation to parking infringements issued. I just wondered whether you had a breakdown of how many of those were parking illegally, say on nature strips and grassed areas.
Yes, through the chair, yes, I will have to provide that after the meeting through an email, and we'll continue to expand on that in future reports.
Thank you.
Councillor Mather.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In relation to the proportion of impounded animals returned to owners or rehomed, dogs 95, in fact both dogs and cats 95%. Is that a first offence or is that a follow-up offence, subsequent offence? Where we return them back to their owners?
Through the chair, that can be anything, Councillor Mather, so it might be simply a lost dog that has, been impounded and we return that. If you're talking about aggressive animals, that's not captured within that report.
Yes. So if there's an animal that gets out from time to time and we have to keep returning it, obviously that's not occurred because they would be eligible for a fine, I would imagine.
Yes.
I mean, do we take them back to their owners and say, look, look after little Fido because he's been out again?
Through the chair, that is correct, yes.
Yeah, so there's no charge on that?
No.
I think they need to learn a lesson, fix up their fence. The other one too, the pest management plants, the GRT, Lakina, Lantana, all of those. We've got a big job out there, Mr Mayor, and I just don't know what sort of funding we've got or human resources we have to tackle it. Because everywhere I go, the creeks, the roadsides, they're becoming so heavily infested, it's costing us an arm and a leg just to maintain them. So we really need to get some funding from the respective governments to be able to continue this and do some temporary resourcing to be able to deal with it, because we're going to have waterways that are blocked.
Councillor Mather, you're not in debate at the moment, you're making a statement.
No,
so
I'm
is
just
this a
making
question? Is this a question to the
observation.
General Manager?
Yes, I would like to think that we can go after some funding to up the resources to be able to deal with this, because this is the tip of the iceberg. We're not overcoming it, Mr Mayor.
So, Mr.
It's
General
just an
Manager, are we
observation.
actively seeking funding for these types of programs?
Yes and yes to both of those
Yes,
questions.
yeah, that's good, Mr Mayor, because we've got a big job ahead of us on that one. I ticked the foxes too, Mr Mayor. They seem to be breeding quite well lately.
Judging by the number eradicated.
Yes. Engagement and consultation on page 49. What sort of a response, is there anything that we need to be aware of?
You're on the wrong page.
49. 49. Oh, I'm on the next one.
Yeah.
It's all right, I'm ahead of you. Sorry, Mr Mayor.
Okay. Any other questions of the General Manager? All right. So we're receiving the report. Councillors, moved Councillor Friend. Second, please, Councillor Mather. Thank you. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr General Manager. Next is item 11.5, which is the Regional Arts Development Round 1, 2022-23. You're delivering this one?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor and Councillors. This is just a small change to the report that was presented in the December meeting. There was just a small grammatical typo error in relation to the grant requested and grant recommended, and you can now see that they are both even. This has been approved by the committee and was unfortunately just an error on our behalf.
Questions, councillors? Right. Okay, happy to deal with this one. Move it, please. Councillor Mather, second, Councillor Eastwood. Thank you. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr General Manager. 11.6. Request to utilise a portion of reserve for park and recreation use, lot 71 on survey plan 294284. Welcome to the table, ladies. Molly, you delivering this one?
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
The table is yours.
Thank you. Morning, everyone. So as you're aware, the Keppel Bay Sailing Club is in the process of remodelling, redeveloping their current location. So one of the things they've asked for council support and the state support in that is that while that development is occurring, they can relocate to a different area of the coast, Farnborough Beach, so that they can continue their sailing operations only. So this doesn't pertain to restaurant or hospitality or training. This is purely about their sailing sport operations, correct? So as part of the process, community consultation has occurred, an amended land management plan. So there are a number of state requirements in terms of the use of this land. So there are still a number of steps for the Sailing Club to go through to secure overall approval. This report today is presenting those engagement results, the amended land management plan, and also asking council if they would support or resolve to issue a permit for that temporary relocation. That's not the ultimate approval, but it is one step towards making this happen. The state will also, is currently undergoing its review of the amended land management plan. Christine, no updates today on that so far. So we're still waiting on that final report. However, the Sailing Club will be required to go through a number of other approvals, MCU, traffic impact assessment, etc. This is one portion of, this sits with council, the permit. So this report is specific to whether council would resolve to issue a permit or not. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Questions, Councillor Friend?
Thank you. So I have a couple of questions here. So disaster management stated in this report that the area is inundated by 5 metre storm tide. If there was to be a 5 metre storm tide, has council viewed any plans for KBSC to remove the containers in a disaster event? Have they supplied those plans to us?
Not as yet, I believe. However, as part of the MCU, that would be, is that correct, Christine?
I believe so.
Part of the MCU would be the conditions of what can go and how it must be able to be removed in a certain period of time, etc.
Certainly. I have some concerns in relation to the engagement report on this particular report, 11.6. So there were 135 contributors, and yet it says there were 145 contributions. Why are there more contributions than contributors on this particular engagement report?
Is that in the attachment, councillor, or is that?
That is in page 89. Did I say page 89?
89.
Yeah.
In the attachment, yes.
I don't believe there was. Can I take that on notice,
Yes, of
councillor, and
course.
double check?
Yes,
it could
please.
be a typo.
Okay.
But it could also be that there were some online and some paper.
Yes.
But I will double check that with you and get back to you if that's okay.
Thank you. It says 27 out of 135 said no to the temporary sailing operations. Where are their comments? It says that if they say no, they need to leave a comment, and I didn't see any comments on that noted within the engagement plan, page 83. Page 82 notes that key stakeholders who were invited to participate in the project report, it does not state if the key stakeholders indeed participated and what their views were. So that's another concern.
Sure.
When we have these engagement reports and you say these are the stakeholders, but then you don't give what do the stakeholders say, it's really hard to gauge.
Of course.
Yeah.
Can I just
Yes, of
clarify,
course.
one of the reasons the comments, etc., haven't been included in this report is because it's a public document, and so they're not de-identified. However, that can be amended by, we could de-identify all of that information.
Certainly.
And I will say that information, including commentary and stakeholders, explicitly has been given to the state as part of their review. The reason it's not in here was due to it being a public report.
I understand.
But we can certainly amend the report, and I'm sure there's a way within the software we could de-identify.
Or even just email councillors with a note of confidential. That would be fine. For example, I would have liked to have known what our traditional custodians and owners, Durumble Nation, think, what Landcare have said, etc., etc. And there was a little bit concerning, I thought to myself, when I looked at the stakeholders, why was RM Hair and Chris's Coffee noted as stakeholders?
Directly opposite the road.
Thank you. I'm with you now.
So that would the businesses most closely impacted around parking in the road.
Sure. Mr. Mayor, perhaps I'm out of line and I fully expect you to let me know, but I'd certainly like to make a procedural motion to lay this on the table until we have that further information. I personally don't believe that I can make a decision on this report today until we have that further information.
What's the timing on this is for the Keppel Bay Sailing Club?
I believe that their development application, the MCU hasn't been lodged yet, so they are not requesting a temporary move tomorrow. We still have a little bit of time while those other processes are playing out. We can certainly get the information to you today.
Well, I'd be happier to deal with this today, Councillor Friend, so if we can get this information, Molly,
Yep,
today.
I'll do it immediately. Yeah, we'll do it immediately.
That would be fantastic, because I want to resolve this today.
Sure.
Yeah.
So can we have the reports from the other people that Councillor Friend was talking about?
We'll find everything that we have and share.
Thank you.
So, Mr Mayor, what you've asked is to lay it on the table until later this meeting.
Yes, we will.
Thank you.
Just a question, Mr Mayor, to Molly. Molly, if we removed the authors of the comments, is there any confidentiality in having those comments provided?
I don't believe so, Trichy.
Just under the Privacy Act, Councillor Mayfield, I will just redact any personal information, so no, I'll just do that right now.
Councillor Hutton?
Of course, the only risk there is because we're asking them for very specific information about its impact on them, that even once you remove their name, you could end up having to
Identifiable.
redact and to make all sorts of changes to what they've said that it makes it unusable data. So I think you're better off receiving it as a confidential piece of information as opposed to doing the redaction and removal, because by the time you get to the end of that process, you may not have much to say at all.
The only
Thinking.
The only other thing I'd just like to reiterate is this is one of council's small roles to play. The state will also bring their decision and we will share that with you, but we can't predict what that might be.
All right. Councillor Friend, your questions are exhausted?
No, that's fine. I'm
Okay,
happy with that.
Thank you. Righto. Any other questions, councillors? All right, so we're going to lay this on the table, councillors, pending further information later to be dealt with later in this meeting. Jessie, you okay with that? All right. All in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously, thank you. Mr CEO, we might break for morning tea. Procedural motion to break for morning tea. All in favour? Thank you, councillors. motion to return from morning tea, please. Moved Councillor Friend. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We live, Jussie, again? Welcome back to our members of the community viewing in on live stream. We're up to 11.7, which is the landfill cell design budget. And we have Project Manager Doug Bergman with us today. Mr Bergman, over to you.
Just reading off the summary, councillors, Mayor. Following tender, we've identified that additional budget is required for the design of the next landfill cells, which is 3A and 3B, and for the design of the capping of the current cells, which is 2A currently full and 2B currently in use. Our recommendation is to bring forward additional design budget from the waste reserve for landfill capping to increase the total design budget from 250 to 370,000 for both new cells 3A, 3B and the capping of cells 2A, 2B. The background is we went out to tender, did a rigorous tender process, as we always do. 50 odd downloads for the documents and some submissions that came back in. The submissions that came back, we eventually chose a particular consultant. Their cost was over our budget by about $20,000 or $25,000, give or take. However, there are a number of other activities that we need to take care of in amongst that increase of budget. The background for the whole site, there's a capital construction cost of $8 million for 2 additional landfill cells, which is 3A and 3B, which are anticipated to be constructed in 24-25 and 25-26, and that does include the design period that we're going to be going through. A provision at 30 June 22 of approximately 5.8 for capping cells 2A and 2B, which are the 2 current cells. One, as I've said a second ago, is already full, and the other is rapidly approaching full. Includes an estimate for design works around the new cells. This work is funded and provisioned outside the forward works plan, with approximately further 3.4 for ongoing restoration and maintenance over the following 30 years, which is a pretty standard thing for landfill sites. The total landfill rehab and restoration provision of 9.2 is identified as internally restricted cash. Okay. We do have some cost reports that have been floating around since 2015, councillors. Bear in mind that it is from 2015 and these are cost estimates that were done essentially off a couple of sketches in a report. So the level of accuracy, our confidence in that is not what I would call robust. In the design stage, we do have good opportunity to affect what happens through the construction phases. We obviously can influence how the money gets spent, what gets spent on, and what the overall cost is, and that's indicated in the little graph that Mr Deegan did put in the report that we've provided. I'm happy to talk around that at any time, probably not right now though, if anyone wants explanation on what that is. I'm not sure what else I can say around that. Project management costs, we've broken down the costs of what we're looking for. We're looking at project management allowance for weather technical investigation, geotech investigation, additional scope for survey, etc. A new sorting pad, which we do have to move because the existing sorting pad is exactly where cells 3A and 3B are going to be placed. So we do need to relocate the sorting pad. We have already awarded portion 1, so we've dropped the project into 2 portions. One is for the for the new cell 3A and 3B, and portion 2 is for the capping of 2A, 2B. So it's ultimately imperative that we do increase the budget to make this work happen, considering that there are actually environmentally legislative repercussions if we don't cap 2A, 2B. And in light of the recent audit that we've had, we should probably start towing the line lines. No previous decisions around it, no access inclusion issues, etc. Budget implications. The additional design funding can be accommodated either by drawing on the reserve provision for remediation of cells 2A and 2B, which we have 6.2 of capital lying around, or bring forward some capital construction funding for 3A and 3B, which is currently 3.75 for 24-25 and 4 million for 25-26.
Right. Thank you, Mr Bergman. Councillor Friend.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I will move this, but I also have a question. So I noted in the report that the contingency was excluded in the preferred tender option. So is this 120K part of that contingency?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Watson.
Maybe to the CEO, what does this do to our budget that we have, an extra 250,000? Where do we find it?
Mr Mayor, as Doug pointed out, the proposal, the preferred option, so the recommendation actually doesn't nominate the funding solution, but the report offers two different options, the preferred of which is to draw from the reserve that's dedicated for this particular purpose, so it won't have an impact on the operating or our capital program, but it does impact our reserves and future capital that these things will be dedicated to, but it is for this purpose. So that's why option one is recommended. Otherwise, we're talking about bringing forward capital program, which the alternative option is to bring forward capital which would affect the current adopted program.
Does that mean in future years with our budget it causes troubles there, or the money's already sitting in the bank waiting to be used, just being held on to?
The money has already been allocated for this.
Okay, understand. Thank you.
Any other questions, Councillor Mather?
Yes, Mr Mayor. When we plan for something, we design, and somewhere along the line we do modifications if that planning isn't exactly what we want. We're saying that we've never planned, that this design has never been identified before. This is a new design that we haven't expected.
Look, that's not right. So what actually we have in the background is we know that we know that we would have to have done this design at some point, and we know that we would have had to have done these cells at some point. The reports that we've had since 2015 have identified a timeline, and as we've rapidly approached the end date of that timeline, we've gone, right, we really need this in place, we really need this in place. We do have reserves of cash for this work. I believe it's in the realm of about $9 or $12 million, somewhere between $9 and $12 million. And that has simply been put away because that report stated that you are going to need this money at this date. Mm-hmm. So we know that we have known that this has been coming, and we're literally now at the point. So the answer to your question is no, we knew it was coming.
Knew it was coming. We've provided for it, and the money's in the bank.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's happy with that, Mr Mayor. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions, councillors? All right. Councillor Friend is moving. Can I get a seconder? Councillor Hutton, thank you. Councillor Friend, did you want to speak to the report?
Oh, only briefly. Thank you, Mr Mayor. The money is already there. We're just bringing it forward, $120,000. It is part of the contingency for the future works or the very near future works. This is mandatory. This is something that must be done. It's not a desire. It's not optional. It's something that moving forward we need to shore up that our landfill is workable for future generations. So thank you, Doug, for all of your hard work and your continuing hard work, and I commend this to the table.
Thank you, Councillor Friend. Anyone speaking against? Would anyone else like to speak for? We're happy to go to the vote on this one, councillors. We've got a move of Councillor Friend, second to Councillor Hutton. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We were going to duck back to 11.6, but no, probably not. So we might go on to 11.8 in that case. Greta and...
11.8, Mr Mayor, before we begin 11.8, I have a declaration of interest.
Yep.
I live in the immediate vicinity and may be perceived as biased either for or against, so I'll be leaving this meeting.
All right, thank you, Councillor Friend. Welcome to the table, Greta and Erin. The floor is yours, ladies.
The PowerPoint. So the application is for reconfiguring a lot of one lot into two lots. Okay. The property is located at 6 Ross Street, Yeppoon, and is in the medium density residential zone. The site is proximal to the Yeppoon CBD, public transport, schools and employment. The proposal creates a vacant lot at the rear with an existing dwelling house located on proposed lot 1. Both lots do not meet the minimum lot size of 1,000 square metres. Overall, the proposal is compatible with the character of the area, taking into consideration the existing land use pattern, and provides an alternate residential product. 2 submissions were received. with concerns raised in relation to high density living within the area, the removal of a tree on the site and the driveway location. It does achieve a suitable density of development for the medium density residential zone, and infrastructure charges of $25,000 are applicable. We support the office's recommendations to support the proposal.
Thank you. Questions, councillors? Councillor Mather?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Although I don't personally support these house blocks being cut up into two pieces, it worries me a little bit that down the track we might have too much of this and there's going to be congestion either in the neighbourhood or in the streets. And a lot of the streets aren't built for having additional cars. Mr Mayor, I noticed there's an easement going over number 2, proposed lot 2. What's that for? Can somebody let me know?
Yep. So through the chair, there are 2 easements proposed over lot 2. One is due to the sewer level on the site. The entirety of the lot doesn't command the sewer, so one of the easements makes sure that the building height for future dwellings on the site does command the sewer, so they can put their toilets or their shower on any location. There is an additional easement for the site for the bottom, for it to be on columns or elevated for stormwater management. The reason we decided to do the easements is to provide transparency to future purchasers when they do go to research the property. They're aware of the requirements for the site.
Can we just stop there for a moment? The sewerage, is that have anything to do with elevating the house on number 2? Like for sewerage purposes, is there a sewerage main through there?
Yeah, so there is a sewer line that runs through there, but it just sits a little bit higher than, because it is a bit of a sloped site. So just to make sure that you can get service, that's why the floor needs to be a bit higher.
So they've got to
So
lift
they
the
can go
house,
down.
lift the house to make way for the sewer. Not an ideal. Yeah, yes, but for flooding purposes as well, because it's on a slope. Stormwater. Yeah, yes. Okay. Well, somebody else might have a question. I've got probably 1 or 2 extra, Mr Mayor. Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Mather, we're back to you then. Oh, Councillor Watson, all right.
I'm a little confused. There's 2 plans. One shows, there's 2 plans, and lot 1 says on page is that? Oh, now I've lost it all. 443, and then the other one says 539 for the same block.
That, I haven't got it in front of me, but they did change their plan very slightly, pretty much just swapping the size of each lot. So that would have just been a mistake if it's the same lot. The correct plan shows lot 2 with an access handle rather than an easement, being 569 square metres, and lot 1 443 square metres.
Any other questions before we go back to Councillor Mather?
Pretty well right, Mr Mayor, but I did notice that the word infill, that it's determined as infill. It's not the idea of infill that I had in mind, Mr Mayor. Having 2 little blocks on one average, what used to be an average block.
All right. No, noted, thank you. All right. Any other questions, councillors? I've got a move of Councillor Hutton, seconded please. Councillor Eastwood, thank you. Councillor Hutton, did you want to speak to it? All right. Anyone speaking against? Happy to go to the vote, councillors. All in favour? Carried unanimously. For those that are here, would someone find Councillor Friend, please? Thank you, ladies. We might take a break at the end of the reports to do that before we go into urgent business. (11.9) councillors, is the monthly financial report for the period ending 31 December. And welcome to the table, Caitlin and Richard.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, today I'm presenting the monthly financial report for the month and year results for December 2022. Overall, the operating results to date show a deficit of about 1.045 million. This is mostly due to the accrual on prepaid rates being recognised in the accounting system now, and we'll be back on track when the rates are committed in the system in January of this month, and prepayments are applied to both general and water rates bills issued in the system. Both revenue and expenditure are tracking slightly behind in the year-to-date percentages, but are expected to catch up over the remainder of the financial year. And you'll notice that the rates for the month are showing as a negative value, and this is attributed to refunds and credits on accounts in December, as well as adjustments on valuations and subs being issued. As in the past few months, interest revenue is exceeding budget, and materials and services expenditure is slightly behind budget. I should say interest revenue is exceeding budget. Council has a healthy cash balance of about 94.5 million at the end of December, and that was a decrease of around 6.5 million in the month, and that's consistent with the timing of the rating cycle, and it should increase over the coming months with the general and water rates being issued. The total borrowings are sitting at around 57.2 million at the end of December, with our most recent debt service repayment occurred in December, which brought the balance down by about 1.86 million, and that was from the repayment of 2.1 million, and then partial interest and admin expenditures taken off that. The current forecasted capital expenditure is sitting around 45 million, with about 44% of the capital portfolio expended so far, and an additional 22.5 million in capital committals, and some of which will carry through to the next financial year. Rates and charges outstanding have decreased on the previous month by approximately $500,000, and this is in line with the expectations. No new rating occurring in the month, and overall 69% of our overdue balances are with collection agencies. For procurement, continuing last month's Council has continued to produce a similar value of goods and services for businesses located within the Shire, and it's still sitting slightly above what we've spent in the rest of the Central Queensland area. The contracts and tenders team have been busy, and they've got one open tender. They had 59 contracts awarded and one under evaluation at the end of the month. Of the 59 contracts awarded, these are for the register of the pre-qualified trade and services for the business to call upon when required to perform planned or responsive maintenance on council areas. So we're happy to take any questions from you in regard to the report.
All right, thanks, Caitlin. Councillor Friend. I
Thank
shouldn't
you,
even look up, should I?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Caitlin, for this extensive report. But I was just looking through the major projects on page 135, and there's a number of them here that I thought were completed and completed before December of 2022. Resource Recovery Centre was officially opened on the 16th of November, and so I wondered why that was included in this monthly report. Also, Gusmore Street retaining wall I thought was completed before December. Yeppoon Sewage Treatment Plant solar array was definitely completed before December, and Yeppoon Water Recycling Augmentation. I just wonder about those projects and why they were included in the December report, that's all.
I'll answer that. Through the Chair. Councillor, those projects have reached practical completion, but they haven't physically been closed off. So there are some reasons for some of them not being closed off. For example, there are some retentions applying to the solar. There are some rectifications still recently completed in terms of the solar project. So there are a number of things that are effectively complete, but they are not technically fully complete in terms of the financial system.
So thank you. We can expect them to not be on this report in January, perhaps, or
possibly
it
not,
depends.
but certainly between now and probably the end of March, at the latest, I would anticipate them all.
Oh, thank you.
Removed.
Councillor Watson.
Just quickly, excuse me, these issues that are with these projects, are we going to get a report on why they haven't been closed off yet? Because they've been some time.
That's quite normal, I would suggest through the Chair. Projects are completed from the perspective of they are complete, in terms of you can start using that like the resource centre. But there are particularly with contractors, retentions held, performance requirements, etc., that often a project will not physically be shut in terms of the financials for a number of months afterwards.
Question from myself. As you'd be aware, as part of the budgetary process, we, I suppose, requested of officers that there be a 2% efficiency dividend. I'm just wondering how that's tracking, folks, that's all.
Thanks for your question, Mr Mayor. Yes, as you point out, part of Council's adopted budget this year and adopted surplus position of about $90,000, it did require a further unspecified reduction of revenue of about $1.7 million, so 2% of operating expense, or additional revenue to offset. 6 months through the year, I can't say that we have achieved a proportional amount of that efficiency dividend. We've certainly achieved some additional revenue and expenditure savings, but I couldn't attribute them to any concerted effort around the efficiency dividend process. I think we will yield some of those things, and our target remains at 2%. For example, we've just done a fairly detailed review of our insurance portfolio, where I think 2% of our insurance premiums equates to $40,000 or $50,000, and we're considering self-insuring a number of things, or no longer insuring some assets that are reasonably robust. So those processes continue, but I couldn't say to you with confidence that we have yielded 50% of the required efficiency dividend at 50% of the year.
Well, as an add-on to that, do you have any level of confidence that we will achieve it by the end of the financial year?
Yes, I think the effort that's been invested will be yielded in the balance of the year. Will we make the 2%? I'd like to say yes. It will be touch and go. I think councillors have experienced for themselves where proposals to reduce expenditure, reduce service levels and the like has put pressure on organisation or community response to those service levels. It is a discipline that is new to us. But we will continue, we'll employ our best endeavours to achieve that outcome, and a surplus budget, which is an aim of ours, is contingent on achieving that outcome.
No, thank you. And just as recently as yesterday, a number of councillors and I had a conversation around this. We as a group of councillors have to exercise some discipline around our expectations and what we bring to the table in terms of additional projects and additional requests for funding that aren't necessarily in the budget. But certainly, you know, if we're going to do that, we would like to see that obviously matched by the rest of the organisation as well. So I think it's a team effort in terms of making sure that what we set out to achieve when we adopted the budget is actually achieved. All right, thank you, Mr CEO. All right, so can I get a... Councillor May, the question.
Yeah, yes, please, Mr Mayor. While we're looking at a 2% efficiency rate, have we experienced any additional input from the community questioning why things aren't done in their usual way, which would reflect on the efficiency that we're trying to achieve?
That's a fairly broad question, Councillor.
Like,
Can we get
in
a
other
bit
words, if
more
we're trying to
specific,
save
perhaps?
money somewhere,
Yeah.
trying to save money somewhere, somebody's going to miss out, we think. Have we noticed any additional complaints in that regard that would show, hang on, that's not a good idea, they're complaining? Grass cuttings, for one thing. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, with respect and in support of the officers on that one, I think it's always going to be difficult because people aren't necessarily going to be happy with the level of service anyway.
You'd be surprised, Mr Mayor.
But you know, having said that, I mean, obviously, budget cuts, and we knew that when we adopted the budget, there were going to be reductions in service levels in some areas. That may well be causing some angst within the community, but it is what it is in a sense.
I'm just wondering whether I'm not saying the managers are the problem, I'm saying have the staff been asked to show us how they can do things better more efficiently, because I believe that there's waste out there, and I believe they know the answers, and I believe they know how to make it right and get the best bang for the buck, so to speak. So have we gone that way? Have we asked for their input to come back the other way?
You want to answer that one, Mr. CEO?
The answer to Councillor Mather's question, Mr. Chairman, is yes. So you've all heard the phrase less with less in the past, and there is a degree of cynicism around that particular phrase, but that's exactly what that's intended to do. We have less resources available to us. We're not prepared to tax people at a greater level to do increased level of things or even maintain the current level of things. The only other lever that can be pulled is to do less.
I think the councillor's question though is around, is right across the board down to, the people on the ground in the field, are they actually being consulted for their ideas? I think that's what you're asking, councillor.
Yeah. And I'd question some of the practices or some of the things that have occurred, and I'd be asking, how did they get away with that? And it's not the staff; they were told to do something. You know, when you send 3 guys up to the far north with a trailer with a ride on, and they do probably 45 minutes work and then head all the way back to Yeppoon, is that efficiency?
Well, it's
I'll
probably,
come back to that, Mr. Mayor, because I want answers on that one.
well, we'll probably need to come back to it, councillor, because we're, I think, moving away from the finance report a little bit.
No, it's getting to our managing practices. That's what I'm saying. I think we are wasting a lot of money.
I'm not disagreeing with you, councillor, but this is probably not the forum. Yeah. All right. Any other questions?
I'll think of something.
All right. Councillor Hutton is moving. Can I get a second? Councillor Eastwood, thank you. Did you want to speak to the report, Councillor Hutton? Okay, so we're happy to go to the vote. Councillors, all in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Caitlin. We're up to 11:10, which is the monthly workplace health and safety report. And we have Chief Human Resources Officer and our Coordinator for Safety today. So welcome, folks.
Good morning, Mayor, councillors, CEO, and
Mr. Lancaster, are you delivering this or are you delivering it? Okay.
Mr. Lancaster is.
Right, yeah.
Good morning, all, as stated. The first part I'd like to point out is the actual photograph on the front of the report. That's high-risk activities that we're undertaking, and we're undertaking a number of high-risk activities within the community. And I'd just like to make it noted that this works have been carried out very professionally, particularly in regards to working beside traffic, trenching up to 6.6 metres in depth. On a number of occasions we've done inspections on those sites and found them to be compliant in all areas. So I think I'd like to make that point that we're undertaking those works in an effective and safe manner. We had 14 reports for the month of December. No lost time injuries. We're continuing to hopefully maintain that. We had a couple of medical treatments and a couple of first aids and 4 report onlys. December being a shorter month, a lot of people finishing up 2 weeks before Christmas and just before Christmas. We're continuing to get the reports and report onlys, and they're excellent because we're able to put things in place which prevents them becoming bigger issues. I suppose there's a number of graphs there for you to view, and if you have any questions you may ask them. But I suppose for us, our total recordable incident frequency rate has continued to rise. That's where we're looking after those a lot better and preventing them from becoming anything worse. And our total lost time injury frequency rate is continuing to decline. So in the last 6 months, prior to Christmas, we had 1. So we're continuing to maintain that in the current environment, which is a benefit to our employees and overall cost in insurance rates to council.
Yeah. And if I can just add to that as well, councillors, so as Greg had mentioned, the lost time injury frequency rate has continued to decrease, and we've been tracking that as an organisational KPI for this financial year. So since 1st of July of 2022, we've actually reduced that lost time injury frequency rate by 6.55, so which is a really good effort. So obviously needing to continue to focus on early reporting and intervention, and the safety team are doing a great job and working closely with our leaders and helping to ensure that people aren't injured at work and are needing time off as a result of that.
Thank you. Councillor Hutton.
I just had a question in regards to the security item that was listed where it says that there was an officer mowing and brush cutting, and when they returned to their truck they noticed that the tablet was missing. Am I to infer that the truck was unlocked? Like, is that to be taken from that?
That's correct, Councillor Hutton, and that was part of our investigation, determining on the locking of equipment, and we've made that a high priority. So that was one of the outcomes of the investigation. Subsequently, a lawnmower, a Toro lawnmower, turned up at Fleet for some minor works, and underneath the seat of that Toro lawnmower was found a tablet, which had some significant scratching and damage. So that is also being investigated as to was that tablet lost or was it just misplaced. So that forms part of the investigation, Councillor Hutton.
Thank you.
I was going to ask that question as well, so thank you, Councillor Hutton. The other question I had, folks, was around the item above that, which says an employee had completed works on the nature strip beside Coal Train and was transitioning to the opposite side of Milroy Drive in preparation to complete the mowing works. While completing the mowing works around the signs and the street light prior to setting up signage, contact had been made with the street light. Upon contact, the street light had fallen across the Poon Rockhampton Road. That's pretty impressive. How do you do that?
So, look, that's a significant event, and it's not our first light post. We did one very similar at the intersection of Bungandara turn-off. Now, what happens, and you'll note one of the things that I've asked them to have a look at is we've done damage to also the normal mowers. Now, the attempt is to get as close as possible to equipment to reduce the amount of whippersnipping that needs to be undertaken. But in attempting to do that, we make contact with either park benches or various other things. In this case, the operator was attempting to clear that area in preparation for placing signage, but also to get close enough which would get as much grass as possible. Street lights have to meet a code for Department of Transport, and they are bolted, but the bolts, the U's are cut out, and they're on a slide ring, and it doesn't take much force when you strike them to fall. That's i.e. in relation to a vehicle accident or event involving a vehicle. They're designed to fall, and the electrical cables are also designed in a way that they part, but the live wires always remain processed. Now, again, this was significant enough for us to have, and we're still having a look at it. It was significant enough that we put a light post across Yeppoon Rockhampton Road. We were lucky that there were no traffic on the road at that time of the morning, extremely lucky. And we were lucky that a police officer had come along within less than a minute on his motorcycle, so he was able to pull up and get extra assistance. It only required a couple of people to actually relocate it off the road, and the road was opened fairly quickly. So I understand your concern. It's a second time, and we now need to have a look at why these incidents occur.
Councillor Hutton. Sorry, Councillor Friend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I had three questions, but one of them was actually what the Mayor has asked. It appears, you know, when we say that we knock over a street light, what speed were they doing? How much force was involved? If they're so easily knocked over, is that something that council must discuss further with Ergon to make sure that they are actually far more secure than a lawnmower can knock them over?
Sorry, Councillor Friend. it wasn't a lawnmower, it was a tractor with a slasher on the back of it. So a significant amount of latent force in reversing into it. So yeah.
Thank you. My other two questions, page 140, medical treatment. So it says both infrastructure and communities had incidences where the person involved seemed to be dehydrated. My question is, within the take fives that the staff regularly undertake, is there a take five in relation to hydration, drinking water and avoidance of heat stroke?
So yes, we have that process in place. We have ice and we have water, and we supply them with containers, and they're able to refill those during their breaks. In this case, it wasn't determined. Both of those, one of those, the second one, the operator was actually inside an air-conditioned cab of the vehicle. Both of those persons attended hospital, and there was some inference that it was a virus. They were unwell through a virus, more than heat stress related illness. Okay. Although that doesn't take away the fact that we manage that, and on them extremely hot days we do, the team will go out and do ice pole drops.
Sure.
But yes, because it came up that way, it is a significant thing that we need to review and have a look at.
So your team actually go out and do ice pole drops. That's fantastic to hear. Okay, it's encouraging. The last one is about first aid. So someone drove into a tree stump in high grass. What I want to know, and my question is, did this incident prompted the immediate slashing of this high grass on the road reserve?
Okay. Part one of the question was, it is a first aid, and there was a part missing. The driver, when hitting the stump, has contacted the windscreen with their head, just give themselves a bit of a bump. Further investigation of that is, we have significant damage to our equipment from driving in long grass, so why are we doing it? So that's a question I ask every time. Why do we drive in grass when we can't see what's in there? In relation to the mowing aspect, that would be something that I would have to discuss with open spaces. But I'm not particularly to speed on exactly where it happened. All I know is that they're off-road, and is it a road that they should be driving on? If it was, then it wouldn't have a stump in it. If it's something we're not mowing, then it's a concern that if it's high enough that the slasher might run into the stump. So we have to ask ourselves why we actually are in those environments in either plant or equipment, and either putting stakes through radiators, damaging property, scratching cars on the side of barbed wire. There are a number of things that we have to look at there, Councillor.
Thank you.
Councillor Hutton.
Yes, I was just wondering if, in regards to future reports, if it might be possible to get some indication of the cost to council of some of these items. So when we're talking about the street lamp going across the road, well, obviously there will be a cost attached to either the replacement or the fixing of that item, as well as whatever damage to the machinery. The missing tablet, if we replaced it, are we throwing $1,000 and then obviously finding another one somewhere? Like, I don't think we need it itemised, but just a cost to council and community during the period of the items that have occurred. When we back into a secondary vehicle, what's the cost? And I know that most of this will be covered under council's insurance, even though it will have issues in relation to our premium, but I just think that would be an interesting piece of information to have, and if we could compare that to last year's costings.
Look, that wouldn't be too hard to do, Councillor. In relation to that, it all depends on how big a value it is, and then to what the insurance pays. So there's your the part that you have to manage, like when you have your car insurance.
The excess.
But we can have a bit of a look.
But we could have a look. We could see what the total cost was. So if we take damage to property of the new sidearm mower being $35,000, we know that was the cost of that, but that was covered by insurance.
Yeah.
But we'd have to. But yeah, we could.
And I'm sure. Like I think it's when reflecting on public money and assets, it's probably worthwhile having a look to see what's the cost that we're incurring.
And as you know, we continue to also be mindful of any damage that's caused to our property, plant, equipment.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Hutton. We're receiving this report, councillors. Moved Councillor Hutton.
I had a question.
Yes, we'll come back to you, Councillor
I was very patient. Just a couple of
Seconded
questions.
Councillor Eastwood. All right, Councillor Friend, you have another question?
Yes, on
Councillor Mather, beg your pardon, sorry.
on page 147, two matters. 20 employees were tested for drugs and alcohol in December. I would hope that they would be all clean.
Absolutely.
That's good. Good news. Thank you.
We run a rigorous program throughout the 12 months. We have the testers come in twice a month, once in January and December being short months. And our record is actually exceptional. We've had two failures for alcohol, and that's been a low rate. But our testing regime is actually excellent when you compare it to other industries where we stand.
Yeah, that's really good news. Thank you for that. And further down, hazard incident safety alerts. Fatal incident involving the unloading of construction materials. And the little dot point underneath that, operators killed by mobile plant.
Just to clarify that for you, Councillor Mather, these are WorkSafe Queensland alerts. These aren't relating to
They're not in our...
They are not within our employees
Well,
or within our shire.
that's comforting. That's very good.
Yeah.
But it's not good for incidents,
No.
but still and all.
So in relation to that, Councillor Friend had asked us to make a note there where they come from, and we've done that.
Yes.
What we do, I get a number of alerts from the Electrical Safety Office or the mining or workplace health and safety. We look at those, any of those that could affect or it be related to the type of work that we do. And so we will present those at our
As a simile, this is what happened there, don't do it here.
Basically, yeah, these are the things that can go learnings. So the learnings from it.
Yes.
Yes, Councillor Mather.
Well, that's good. I'm very pleased to hear that it wasn't here, but still and all, it is terribly sad, and hope we learn by it. Thank you for that.
You, Councillor Mather. We've got a mover, Councillor Hutton, seconded Councillor Eastwood. Happy to go to the vote. You want to speak to it, Councillor?
Councillor, I just wanted to take a moment to thank Greg and the team for the detail provided in this report. I know that in recent months we've been asking more and more questions about it and seeking more detail, and every single time you've come back with more and more. Thank you for that. I think it gives us all a level of comfort, as well as obviously some challenging questions that we then want to detail with the CEO and others. But everything we've asked for, you've provided, and I'm really grateful for the detail and the effort that you're going to keep our staff safe, but also to recognise the assets of our community and this organisation and keep them in best operating order. So thank you for your efforts.
Thank you, Councillor Hutton.
All right. So we've got a mover, Councillor Hutton, seconded Councillor Eastwood. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Well, councillors, item 12 is Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee reports. There are none. So before we go on to urgent business, and there are two items, we might move a procedural motion to break for 10 minutes to consider the feedback from 11.6, and then we'll resume, deal with that, and then go to urgent business. All right, so procedural motion to break for 10 minutes to consider 11.6. All in favour? Thank you. So procedural motion, please, to return from the break. Councillor Mather, all in favour? Thank you. Okay, councillors, we're back to 11.6. We've got to raise this from the table. Moved Councillor Friend. All in favour? Carried unanimously, thank you. All right, so 11.6, councillors, you've had the opportunity to review the comments from the survey. Molly, did you need to make any further comments in relation to this?
Just an answer to Councillor Friend's question. So Councillor Friend asked why there was a difference in the numbers between contributors and contributions, and that is because the contributors represents the amount of people who participated, where contributions represent the amount of comments. So the discrepancy is that a few contributors made more than one comment. So that's the discrepancy there.
Thank you. Point of order. Councillor Eastwood is asked to move this one. Councillor Hutton seconding. So Councillor Eastwood, do you want to speak to this report as we go into debate?
Just briefly, Mr Mayor. Look, the Sailing Club bring a lot to the Capricorn Coast and indeed the Yeppoon region. They have taught a lot of kids some really valuable skills that they've taken on into adulthood, and they continue to have a huge sailing program for our youth particularly, but also for adults and children. And they will continue to have a big impact on this region for years to come, including their sailing regattas and championships. And they are perhaps one of our biggest sports in this area, as well as our biggest recreational areas. Look, there's always going to be a little bit of damage on the foreshore, and I think that what we need to do, as this report states, we need to make sure that everything that's been removed and played with gets fixed and returned to its original state. And if we do that, I have absolutely can't see any reason why we don't go ahead. We need a continuation of this activity, because as soon as we stop, kids will, just being the nature of kids, they fall away, things happen, and sailing loses. And our kids of this region that don't have as much going for them as in the recreational areas and some other places do, are the ones that are going to suffer. So in that regard, I recommend to my fellow councillors that we do go ahead, and just as long as we stick to the plan and our sailing clubs stick to the plan, everything's going to be okay.
Thank you, Councillor Eastman. Can I just clarify, the seconder is Councillor Hutton?
Right.
All right. Anyone speaking against? Councillor Friend.
Mr Mayor, I'm not speaking against. I actually agree with Councillor Eastwood, but I have questions. And reading this information has brought a couple of further questions. And so just for clarification, was there another area along the coast that was considered besides this Farnborough area?
Thank you, Councillor Friend. I believe the Sailing Club had other proposals, and they were waiting on Council's decision as to whether they would need to further explore other areas. Initially, at the beginning of the proposal, within stakeholders, it had been mentioned that other beach accesses further north along Farnborough Road might be a suitable location for positioning of the containers and utilising and having that access to and from the beach without impacting in close to town. There's no amenities in other areas further north of the beach, so that access to toilets and water was an issue.
Sure. Another question that came out of this information was, is LSC planning on contributing funds towards the works required to widen the beach access?
No. The intention is that the Sailing Club will cover any cost required to be compliant with the permit or conditions.
Certainly. And having this been run through our Environmental Department, Natural Resource Management, had it been found that this will destabilise any journal area?
I can only speak for NRM in the sense of the information that has been exchanged while I've been working with them, or so that has not been raised as an issue. The site meeting for the potential widening of the beach access, I believe the angle that the access is on prevents the dunal system from disappearing on the beach side of the dune. It's being proposed to be widened only from the southern side, because that will mean that the vegetation on the northern side will not be affected at all, and it's that angle that will also keep the dune system as it is, except for that widening and then reinstatement as is being proposed at the conclusion.
Thank you.
And NRM have been involved in the design process of the best access that would cause the least.
Lovely. Thank you so much for answering those questions. I appreciate it.
All right. Be happy to go to the vote on this, councillors? All right. So we're going to move it, Councillor Eastwood, seconded Councillor Hutton. All in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, ladies. Yes, I'm going to. Right, councillors, we have two items of urgent business. One is from Councillor Mather, the other is Councillor Hutton. I'm going to go to Councillor Mather first. Councillor Mather.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Mr Mayor. As members would remember, going back to December, we sent a letter to the Minister for Police and Corrective Services asking that a permanent officer be stationed in the Marlborough district, and that has come to fruition. Thank you to all of you. That recruitment process starts tomorrow, where discussions will be had on resumes, and it'll be probably, and I say probably, a matter of about 6 weeks, at a guess, to notify, relocate and settle. And we can expect that. In the meantime, we've had some problems that will cause us to rethink the urgency of the situation. Last weekend, there was a serious assault where the ambulance had to take a victim to Rockhampton. A helicopter would have been called had it not been for the rain, but there is police and ambulance involvement, and I understand the person is really quite injured. There are about 600 or more people who camp in the area, whether it's from the wind farm or whether it's from the mines or whether it's from the army. But there's a lot of people in that town who are bored, and there's a lot of drinking going on. And these people are on the roads. Because of the assault that was so serious, and it took a local person to break it up. And he's not a big person, he's a little slim fellow. But everybody else stood around and watched it happen. And I won't go into the details because that'll be the subject of evidence when it comes to the courts. But that person could still die because the injuries were so horrific. So I've spoken to the mayor. In fact, I've sent him an email last night giving him the details of what occurred. And I've also sent an email to the Assistant Commissioner, Mr Guttridge, alerting him to the situation, saying that if it's going to take that time for a permanent officer, we need somebody there now. Because these people are intoxicated, they're on our roads. There's no law and order in the town, and it was put to me by a professional person yesterday, it's out of control. So I'm asking the table today to support a further motion to the Minister and Mr Guttridge, who was aware of this action, to appoint a temporary person in that location until the permanent process has been finalised. because we can't expect the civilians up there to look after themselves. And as I said, these people are on our roads. So it's unfortunate that we get to the stage. I thought we could have limped through to the process to be finalised, but it's not fair to expect these people to be exposed to those sort of occurrences when there is nobody there to protect them, and the ambulances can't intervene. So I do have it's an urgent motion, it's rough, and if you feel that you need to tidy it, I don't have a problem with that. So I'll read it with your permission, Mr Mayor. The council write to the Minister for Police and Corrective Services, referring him to the serious assault occurring in Marlborough last weekend, necessitating police and ambulance involvement. The Minister be asked...
Can you just, sorry, pause for a second, allow Justine to catch up? Thank you.
I can give her a copy of this. It's a bit scratchy.
Yeah, we'll need it to vote on though, Councillor. Yeah. Serious assault in the Marlborough last weekend, yes?
Yeah. Necessitating police and ambulance involvement. The Minister be asked to assign a temporary police officer to the Marlborough station until the process of the new permanent officer be completed.
What was it after temporary officer?
Assign a temporary police officer to the Marlborough station until the process of the new permanent officer be completed.
Process of the appointment of the new police officer.
Yes.
Of
the appointment of the new permanent officer. Yes. Word missing.
Is there more, Councillor?
Yeah, tiny bit more, man. How's Justine going?
Yep, she's
Right,
up to date.
right.
Yeah.
The Minister be advised there are up to 600 male workers in the Marlborough district. In fact, I was told it's more like 700.
Yeah.
I'm happy, like I said,
Yeah, we can
I'm
do
happy
that.
to tidy it. And a copy to the Acting Commissioner, Mr Kev Guttridge.
So there's a 1 and a 2 there, Justine. So that Council 1, right to the Minister. And at the end of completed, and 2,
The Minister be asked.
forward a copy to the Assistant Commissioner, Mr Kev Guttridge. Assistant Commissioner, Central Queensland Region.
Yeah. Central Region.
Yep, perfect.
Okay. And just to complete that, this is not part of the motion. I've had a reply from Mr Guttridge, who's in Brisbane for a couple of days, and he's getting Superintendent Glenn Pointing, is that his title, to make contact with me to promote this.
Right.
So they're aware of it. And
thank you, Councillor Mather. All right. We all clear on the recommendation? You're moving, Councillor Mather. Seconded, Councillor Friend. Thank you. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Right, item 2 under urgent business is Councillor Hutton. Councillor Hutton, the floor is yours.
Yes, with leave of the table, Mr Mayor, I'd like to read out a letter.
Please.
A decade ago, the communities of Livingstone gave a young man from Yeppoon the opportunity of a lifetime to serve his community on the inaugural Livingstone Shire Council. I've been incredibly privileged to have served the people of our communities. While times haven't always been easy, it's been an exhilarating ride to share in shaping this first decade of the renewed Livingstone. From surviving natural disasters, living through a global recession and an unprecedented public health emergency, to sharing in community events and celebrating the stories of our great citizens and community groups, it's been incredibly special. I hereby give notice of my intention to resign my office as councillor for the Livingstone Shire on the 31st of March 2023. This decision has been one of the hardest of my life, yet reflects my values that ambition should always be tempered with responsibility and that family should always come first. For a decade, I have balanced teaching, council, Lions, Pinefest community and my family. When this community gave me the honour of being the youngest Livingstone Shire councillor ever elected in 2013, I was a young, newly married gentleman with a passion for our community and a desire to ensure our voices were heard. In the decade that has followed, my family has grown to include 2 beautiful daughters. They have started life surrounded with the care of our community and have been raised by our village, especially during the period when I served as the youngest deputy mayor ever in 2018 to 2020. I will always be grateful for the faith our community has repeatedly shown in me as a young bloke who wanted to make a difference, and for the guidance and wisdom which has been shared faithfully by community members. I'm proud to have campaigned for our Shire and for a brighter future. By waiting to the end of March to resign, Council have entered its final 12 months and the community will not have to have an expensive by-election. To serve for such a period of time, I have asked a lot of sacrifices of my wife, my family, my friends, and our community. To my darling wife, my children, my parents and my siblings, I say thank you. I couldn't have done this without them. I am eternally grateful for the love, kindness and support provided by friends and supporters to my family as we've managed life around the crazy events that have shaped the past decade. Thank you all. I return full-time to my first love, teaching, and will continue to serve alongside my great friends in Lions for the benefit of our community. It has been my honour. Thank you.
Well, there's something you don't see every day. Councillor Hutton, I acknowledge the difficulty of the decision that you've just articulated to us. And on behalf of the community, I'm sure there will be many accolades and ongoing accolades for your service to this community, which is beyond reproach. You have always been in this chamber someone who epitomises integrity, someone who epitomises intellect and a genuine commitment to this community. And I don't really know how to express that in any other way apart from saying thank you. The healthy debate around this table that you have brought has been what I think has structured some of the great outcomes within this community and certainly within this term of council. And you will be missed. And I think you can, at the end of March, when you leave us, leave this chamber with your head held extremely high, because your contribution, as I said, to this community has been outstanding. So I can only thank you, Councillor Hutton. I wish I could do more, but ultimately I can thank you. Councillor Eastwood.
Mr Mayor, look, I'd like the opportunity to say a few words.
Of course.
Yeah, I first met Nigel when I became the chaplain at Yeppoon High School in 2002. And Nigel went on, I think he was a school captain, weren't you, Nigel? And was a great leader in our school back then, and continued through his involvement in the youth council and then coming into council to be a huge contribution to our community. We've not always agreed on certain things, but that's healthy in a council table. I've always found Nigel to have great integrity, to be a strong man, and he's become a good friend. And I wish him all the well in his new endeavours, and I know how hard this has been for him, and we really appreciate you, mate, and yeah, good luck for the future. And I'm sure in the future we might even see you back here somewhere, in the long-term future.
All right. Councillor Friend.
I'd just like to say to Councillor Nigel Hutton, thank you again for all of your contribution. I first knew of you in 2014 when I worked at council in the customer support area, and you became a young councillor. My respect started within that time and continued to grow. We may not always agree, but I certainly do absolutely respect you and appreciate everything. And throughout our tenure, I have listened to what you've had to say, and it has influenced me, and I'd like to thank you again.
Okay. All right. On that note, I think we have to receive that. So the recommendation is that Council receives the resignation of Councillor Nigel Hutton effective 31 March 2023 and notes the process prescribed by Section 165 of the Local Government Act 2009 for inviting of public nominations to fill the vacancy once the resignation takes effect. And in the coming weeks, councillors and members of the community, the CEO will release details on the process for those contemplating nomination, and obviously any questions can be directed to the Office of the CEO in that matter. Mr. CEO, any comments from you on that?
No, Mr. Mayor, I think you point out, we obviously are happy to field questions about the process. It will trigger some interest naturally, but in the coming weeks we will, as we say, nominations will be invited once the resignation takes effect, 31 March, so we've got a couple of months to get that preparatory work done in conjunction with council laws, and then that process will be heavily publicised at the time.
Right, thank you. All right, so Mover and Councillor Mather. Oh, you got a question, Councillor?
No, I was going to say, I think there's a word missing in there, Mr. Mayor. That regretfully, councillor regretfully receives the resignation.
All right, happy to include that, Councillor.
Thank you, and I'll be happy to move it, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Seconded, Councillor Friend. Sorry, Councillor Eastwood, she beat you.
What's that again?
All right, so we've got a mover in Councillor Mather, seconded Councillor Friend, all in favour? Carried unanimously. All right, and I think that concludes our business, Mr. CEO. Thank you for your time today, councillors. Again, Happy New Year to you all. Happy New Year to our staff. Happy New Year to the members of our community, and we'll catch up with you in February.